go. Well, hello there. We are in Exodus chapter 12, trying to wrap up this chapter, and I think we'll get it done here today. So, we will start in verse 37. It says, "The children of Israel journeyed from Ramses to Succoth, about 600,000 men on foot, besides children." Now, we actually read, it says about 600,000 men, which is cool because that coincides with the book of Numbers, chapter 1, verse 46, where it totals up to 603,550 men. So that's about 600,000 men, huh? And then for what it's worth, too, that doesn't count the Levites there either. So let's see here. A mixed multitude went up with them also, flocks and herds, a great deal of livestock. They baked unleavened bread of the dough which they had brought out of Egypt, for it was not leavened, because they were driven out of Egypt, could not wait, nor had they themselves provided provisions for themselves. Now the sojourn of the children of Israel who lived in Egypt was 430 years. And it came to pass at the end of the 430 years, on that very same day, it came to pass that all the armies of the Lord went out from the land of Egypt. And it is a night of solemn observation to the Lord for bringing them out of the land of Egypt. That is that night of the Lord, a solemn observance for all the children of Israel throughout their generations. So, Galatians 3:15. Let's take a look here. I know I've got a couple cross references here. The book of Galatians, chapter 3, verse 15. So it says, verse 17, I guess, "And this I say, that the law which was 430 years later cannot annul the covenant that was confirmed before by God in Christ." So it talks about the 430 years there, and it was confirmed to Abraham when he makes the promise to Abraham that by his seed that the nations of the world were going to be blessed. Now that's back in Genesis 13. Moving over. Now, let's see here. Genesis 13. He moved his tent. Actually, now let me think here. Him can count into righteousness. I actually think Genesis 15. So it says in Genesis 15, "Now as for you, you shall go to be with your fathers, you shall be buried to good old age, but in the fourth generation they shall return here, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete." And so when you start putting all these things together, backing up a little bit, in the fourth generation, well, who went down to Egypt? Well, in Israel, Jacob goes down to Egypt, right? Well, from him, you actually find, and where's the other? There we go. The sons of Kohath were Amram, and Kohath was a son of Levi, who was a son of Jacob. So if you actually go from Jacob down to Levi, down to Kohath, down to Amram, down to Moses, you've got your fourth generation. Only 4 generations were in Egypt. The 430 years actually starts with God giving the promise that they're never going to possess Canaan. And here's the catch. Your children will not be able to go and possess Canaan until after 430 years. And during that 430 years, you're always going to be in someone else's land. And they're going to go down to Egypt, and they're going to come out at that 430th year. So here we find them at the 430th year since Abraham got the promise. Now, Abraham was right around the year 1000, just a little bit past the year 1000. And if I'm not mistaken, we're going to find ourselves at the year 1446 BC was the time of the Exodus. And so, I'll take that back though. Abraham was around 2000. I went wrong. I went backwards. David is around 1000. So you can know that if you want to do by round numbers, which is just a little easier, figure Abraham 2000 BC, the Exodus 1500 BC, King David is 1000 BC, and you find the Jews coming back. The Jews were in Babylon around 500 BC, again, 586. So they're really coming back from Babylon, coming out of Babylon around 500 BC. So those are just round numbers to kind of help pinpoint some of your big key timeline events in the Bible. And then it finishes off this section with the Passover regulations. So verse 43, it says, "And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, this is the ordinance of the Passover. No foreigner shall eat it." It's worth noting that in the New Testament, we do have communion. And it's something that's not for unbelievers. It's something that's for believers. There's no reason for an unbeliever to take communion. And so we find that it's the Passover. It's only for Jews. No foreigner shall eat it. But every man's servant who's bought for money, when you have circumcised him, then he may eat it. And a sojourner and a hired servant shall not eat it. In one house it shall be eaten. You shall not carry any of the flesh outside the house, nor shall you break one of its bones. And there's with Jesus, not one of his bones shall be broken. And all the congregation of Israel shall keep it. And when the stranger dwells with you and wants to keep the Passover of the Lord, let all his males be circumcised. Let them come near and keep it. And he shall be a native of the land, for no uncircumcised person shall eat it. One law shall be for the native born and for the stranger who dwells among you. Thus all the children of Israel did as the Lord commanded Moses and Aaron, so they did. And it came to pass on that very same day that the Lord brought the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt according to their armies. So, they're out of Egypt finally. Now, we've got a chapter where we talk about the firstborns and whatnot, and then we head into the Red Sea crossing. And what we see with Paul is he tells us that this Red Sea crossing that's coming up, it's a picture of baptism. And the getting out of Egypt, it's a picture of salvation, being saved from bondage and saved from slavery. And it was all made new by the blood of a lamb. So it's beautiful typology we're going to be riding through as we continue through the book of Exodus. We move out of some of the most classic stories like the 10 plagues and Moses being drawn out of the water and whatnot. But the rest of the book, there'll be battles full of typology. There'll be a rock in the wilderness full of typology. And there'll be a tabernacle full of typology. A type is something that has an antitype. We see that word antitype in the New Testament. And the idea is unlike this is just symbolic of something like an allegory, a type is where this is symbolic of that. And it has a type in the Old Testament and it has a fulfillment in the New Testament. And so there's all these types we're going to be seeing. And it's cool because these are the lessons that Paul exhorts us. He says, I do not want you to be ignorant, brethren. And really he refers to, just to paraphrase, the Old Testament. I don't want you to be ignorant of the Old Testament and all the stories in the Old Testament, which were there for your learning to be your examples. So I'm excited to continue on and to continue to learn more about these examples that we can learn from because they teach us what to do and what not to do and how to be in God's blessing and how to avoid God's chastisement. So I think it's a good thing for us all to strive for. All that said, God bless you guys, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Tomorrow's Saturday. I'll see you guys on Monday or Sunday, depending on where you'll be. I'll be doing Galatians this coming Sunday morning. I'm excited.